Morning. Today we are continuing on with our Unit 5 and we are doing CO41. I can evaluate expressions with fractions using addition and subtraction. So we saw in the last objective we had to brush up on our multiplying and dividing with negative numbers. Now we need to refresh our memory on how we add and subtract fractions. So we're tying in our variables with those fractions. So we need to remember our rules of adding and subtracting fractions. So hopefully you're becoming comfortable with those variables and replacing the values with the correct variable. It won't be too long until you're using them very frequently in math. It's just a common thing to use variables. So we're going to be adding on and doing more and more complicated things with variables. This objective practices plugging in values for variables that are fractions. So remember your rules for adding and subtracting fractions and using variables in an expression. So reminders, who can tell me the big rule with adding and subtracting fractions? Connor? Nope, that's percents. 100 is the big number for percentages. They have to have the same denominator, common denominator. Remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So if we want a common denominator of 40 and we're multiplying by 5, we have to multiply both the bottom and the top by 5. Once we have that common denominator, what's our second rule? When we add and subtract fractions, what happens with that denominator? The denominator stays the same. So we are not adding and subtracting the denominator. We get a common denominator and it stays the same. I would like you to go sit at the side table. So big rules to remember with, actually, you know what? Why don't you come to this one so you're a little closer to the board. Big rules to remember with those fractions. You need a common denominator. Whatever you do to the bottom, whatever you're multiplying that bottom by, you have to multiply the top by. And denominator stays the same. Then, what is our big main rule at the very end? What do we have to remember? I should see every hand up. What do we have to do when we're working with fractions? Ruby, simplify, simplify, simplify. Always simplify your answers. Sometimes it will already be in the simplified form. Sometimes we have to divide down. You might have to divide several times down. So keep checking if you can simplify. So let's look at our very first one. We have A, B, C, and D with their values. So our first step when we're working with variables is we rewrite our equation using the correct values. So I have 3/4 minus what? Kelly?
1/4.
1/4. Now, second thing we have to look at is common denominator. Do we have a common denominator? Oh, made it easy. We don't have to do that step because it's already done. 3/4 minus 1/4. We already have a common denominator, so we can do our math. What is 3/4 minus 1/4? Amanda?
2/4.
2/4. Am I done? Why am I not done, Connor? I have to simplify. What can I divide out of 2/4? Or what can I divide out of 2 that I can divide out of 4? Hannah Mae. I can divide a 2 out. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. That is as simple as I can get. My final answer is 1/2. Let's do one more. Let's do A plus B. So A is 1/4. B is 3/8. What's my next step? 1/4 plus 3/8. What should I do, Liam?
Make a common denominator.
I need a common denominator. So what common denominator should I use?
A
Yeah. I know both 4 and 8 go into 8. So I'm going to keep 3/8 the same. And I need to make 1/4 into a denominator of 8. What do I have to do that, Layla? Sorry, say that again. So I have 1/4. Am I going to divide it by 2? I'm going to multiply it by 2. 1/4 is right here for 8. Yep. So 4 times 2 is that 8. So is my answer 1/8? Why not? I made it a common denominator and multiplied by 2. So it's 1/8. Liam, what'd I do wrong? Tell me what I have to do. Yeah, whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. Do you know how many of us forget to do that? A lot. Whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. Now, I saw this silly little TikTok going around there that called it the doo-doo rule. And they said, oh yeah, tell your 6th graders it's the doo-doo rule. And they'll remember it because it's a silly word. So silly thing to remember. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Just like with our balancing our equations, whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you do to the other, the doo-doo. So make sure you do it. Madison.
We still have to multiply it.
Yep, so that's what Liam was saying. So 1 times 2 is 2, so it should be 2/8 plus 3/8. What is 2/8 plus 3/8? Callie? 5/8, because remember that denominator stays the same. We are only adding and subtracting the numerators. Am I done?
Yes.
Are you sure? How do you know I'm done?
Because we can't simplify it.
Because we can't simplify. There's nothing I can divide out of the 5 that I can also divide out of an 8. So that is my final answer. Circle your final answers so you know which one is your final simplified answer. It will be much easier on the test as I'm correcting it if you circle your final answer. So fill in your variables. Rewrite your equation with the variable values. That's step 1 that we're doing today. Step 2, make sure it's common denominator. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. It's the do-do rule. Okay? Then you add or subtract the top only. Denominator stays the same. Final rule that we must follow. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Okay, make sure your final answer is simplified. Any questions on today's objective? So we're taking things that we've been doing. There's nothing new about this objective. We're just putting a bunch of objectives together into one objective. So it's all math that we have been doing all year. So make sure you're following the steps because there's lots of simple mistakes people make. Make sure you're following all the steps. Remember that we just got our new math packets. Math packet number 7 will be due on February 13th. What's due tomorrow? Khan Academy. So this assignment comes first. Then Khan Academy is due on Thursdays. Make sure your Khan is done. Then you can look at math packet 7. But get your Khan done first. If you are watching this at home, we hope you are well. We hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.